Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, am I getting out there? Well, where do you start? Science has been clear so what we're doing to the climate system, coming from science, has been clear for a long time. Back in the 1980s, late 1980s, the government set up an Intergovernmental Panel on climate change. First major report came out in 1990 quite quickly, and in retrospect it was a bit conservative. It showed we had a real problem. What's happened to fix the problem? Nothing really. I spent 5 years in Colorado putting together the IPCC's fourth assessment report for government. We won the Nobel Peace Prize, as has been mentioned, along with Al Gore.
Right.
What's happened to fix the problem? Nothing really. The increase in the Earth's surface temperature is running around 1.1 degrees now, and we're trying to keep below 1.5. We'll be there in 20 years, the way we're going. The science is now looking at transitions as we go into a climate that hasn't existed for a long, long time. Long before people arrived really on the planet, or evolved on the planet. Some experts think the Western Antarctic ice sheet has already passed the transition point and will raise sea level by 3 meters. The issue is now how quickly will it happen? Not whether it will. It probably will. Methane, the second most important greenhouse gas, it's already been mentioned several times this afternoon, is going up at record rates in the atmosphere. We have never seen it going up this fast. We know back in the 1980s it was fossil fuels. Now it's not. We know that very definitely. It is not. Something else is happening. There's still the scientists debating what it is, but the consensus is rapidly moving. It's nature. It's the wetland. It's Mother Nature now taking over and showing that we don't know what we're doing. Last year, Pakistan suffered, as the United Nations put it, an unprecedented climate disaster. Another 8 million people having to move into relief camps, many of them having no home to go back to. Here in New Zealand, the heavy rain events starting to collapse our hillsides, quite close to the Wellington region. Storm surges eroding our coastline, sea level rising at an increasing rate. Don't look at the MFE report. The reality is sea level around New Zealand is going up by more than 5 millimeters every year. In a decade, that's 50 mils. And the rate is accelerating. It's going to take us many years to recover from Cyclone Gabrielle. And the next one might come before we've recovered. That's what's happening. That's the reality, I'm afraid. Why isn't there more public recognition that we're heading rapidly into a world we don't want? Where are the people? Why is it just letting it happen? The Paris Agreement the government's agreed to in 2016, formally adopted by 196 countries. Whoa, that'll solve the problem, won't it? They agreed to keep global warming below 2 degrees and aim for 1.5. But when will they start to work on it? When will the government actually start to do things? We're running out of time. And you've already heard mentioned the United Nations criticizing what's happening. But other global crises like the war in Ukraine just make it more difficult. So we're dealing with lots of different things at the same time. A sustainable future, well, it could just be wishful thinking. I think the priority should be let's start by avoiding the major disasters. Governments focus on the next election, I'm afraid. In New Zealand it's 3 years out. In the United States, where I lived for too long, it's only 2 years out because they have presidential election every 4 years and the others every 2. Planning processes need to recognize short-term and long-term requirements. That's understood. So, it's what's going to happen in the next 2 years, and then after that what gets done for a 10-year plan. And then it all gets revised before the 2 years is finished. So they revise the 2 years and forget the 10 years. That is so much of the planning processes, right down to local governments, I'm afraid. Short-term stuff dominating. So people us. We really care for our children and our grandchildren. Iwi, we should know a lot about in this country, have a long-term relationship with their land, the sense of care for others within most of our communities. There's an inherent desire in the human mind to survive and to be together. Where's it gone? Why isn't it in the governance system? Well, you know, when I started working with Susan Solomon on the IPCC Fourth Assessment Report, we thought we'd put out a summary for, not for the government, but for schools. So we put together 20 frequently asked questions. Everything else had to get government approval for from the United Nations process. Susan said, we're not going to bother, we're just going to do it. And we did. And in the end, a colleague from DuPont, a big petrochemical company, got that into every school in the United States. That was probably more important than our winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Get the message out there and get it to the kids. Make them realize what they're doing, and they can very often... In India, we've seen the kids are telling their parents what to do, and it's really worked in some cases. Can we take long-term decision-making away from the current form of government? We tend to think that democracy is the best form of government, but the Western-style democracies make decisions very often where 49% disagree. And there's a change in government and everything flips around the other way. Here in New Zealand, iwi have a tradition going way back of co-governance. They work together. And they have ways of building up a collective purpose in what they do. It's working together to overcome the major challenges. And I've learned from them. I've worked with them now for several years up in the Kapiti area and a bit further north. I'm in a group run by Jim Bolger that is set up to come up with a long-term plan for the Kapiti Coast District Council. And I had a meeting just on a week ago with iwi in Otaki. And one of the women there said, we're not going to build seawalls. We'll just move back. There's plenty of land. We'll retreat. It is a mindset of living with nature, not opposing it, not setting up a barrier to it, but living with it. And that has to come into the mindset much more broadly. There's another example. The reason we got the Paris Agreement with governments, it was led by a wonderful woman called Christiana Figueres. She comes from Costa Rica. And her father, Jose Figueres, president of Costa Rica, he just closed the army down. He's in that country, the other countries around him were saying, if you do that, we'll just invade you. They never did. He put all the money that was going into the army into schools. I got to know about Costa Rica when we had a meeting there, and I flew in from Los Angeles to San Jose, their capital city. And I was sitting next to a guy, I said, you know, why are you going for a holiday? He said, no, I fly for United Airlines, but that's where my home is, and I'm taking an early retirement. I'm getting out of the United States. I'm going to live in Costa Rica. It's an amazing country. It really is. It's got far more biodiversity than New Zealand does. They've been hit by cyclones, it's affected their economy, and they're actually still ahead of New Zealand. They're moving into totally carbon neutral energy supply and getting rid of petrol. They've also started up something called the High Ambition Coalition, which is to extend that Paris Agreement that governments agreed to now cover all of biodiversity all around the world. They're innovators, they're pushing. We need to learn from countries like that. We need to pick up the good things they do and follow them. They have less GDP per capita than us, and they're caring for their environment more. We can catch up with them. Climate change is a problem caused by what we do as individuals, but we need a collective solution to it. We need to really find ways to work together to get over the top of it, and we're running out of time. We've got to move faster somehow. Thank you.